Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on Fat Burning Man, where we talk about real food and real results. Do you ever feel like you're too busy with work or kids to make health a priority? Today we're here with Sarah Fragoso, the best-selling author of 6 books and mother of 3 who does it all with style. You'll learn super simple exercises you can do at home without a gym, the top snacks to feed a growing family fast, how to determine your carb tolerance, and much more. Before we get to the show, here's a success story that just came in. This is from Patty on Facebook, who says, "Clothes shopping today. I've been wearing a size 10 pants, so I pulled out some 10s and some 8s just in case. Both too big. I ended up buying size 6s, but they're even a little roomy. Washing and drying should fix that. The Wild Diet is the best and is so easy for me. I've been on board since February 2016, down 31 pounds and 14 inches. Right on, Patty." This one's from Kim, and she says, "I've been on the Wild Diet for 6 months. In that time, I've lost 30 plus pounds and I've reduced my medications. When I started, I was having problems breathing, walking up and down a flight of stairs or around my house. Kicked my butt. I went to a cardiologist because I thought I was having problems with my heart. After thousands of dollars of tests, failed stress tests, past chemical stress tests, he didn't even have any answers for me. After 6 months with the Wild Diet, I'm able to walk up and down 6 flights of steps at work with no breathing issues." Kim, this is the type of non-scale victory that I'm talking about. When I worked with Kurt on the ABC TV show, one of the biggest problems at the beginning was all of that visceral fat, as you described. For the first weigh-in, he was at 52% body fat. Had a lot of trouble breathing, even for walking around work or the house and doing errands and things like that. And one of the biggest things that happened right away was he didn't need as many medications anymore. In fact, he was off all of them within 3 weeks because his biomarkers improved so quickly switching to real food. And then, of course, you start to notice these other benefits, that you have more energy at work, you can breathe better. That's why this lifestyle is worth it. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, Kim and Patty, and we're here for you. Now, if you'd like to try the Wild Diet yourself from any device, including the one that you're listening on right now, check this out. We just updated our 30-day Wild Diet program with the best meal plans that we've ever put together. In this plan, we share 30 days of mouth-watering meals that are designed to help you drop fat with real food. Here's what you have to look forward to. We'll show you how to reprogram your metabolism to go from a sugar burner who's addicted to carbs, and especially sugar, to a fat burner, leading to rapid weight loss for most people. You don't need to slave on a treadmill for hours. You can lose weight by exercising less with my quick Wild 7 workouts. You also don't need to obsess yourself with eating 6+ meals a day or every 3 hours or anything like that. You simply eat when you're hungry. No ridiculous workouts, no calorie counting or gloom required. If you're ready to start shedding stubborn fat while eating delicious food, get our 30-day program for a limited time discount at fatburningman.com/30 days. That's the number 30, DAYS. From any device, just type in fatburningman.com/30 days. 30 DAYS. Or if you just want to dip your toes into the wild lifestyle, you can get a free Wild Diet quick start guide and 7-day meal plans for joining my newsletter at fatburningman.com. I'll see you there. All right, on to the show with Sarah Fragoso. You're about to learn how to prioritize your health when you have kids, super simple exercises you can do at home without a gym, the top snacks to feed a growing family fast, how to determine your carb tolerance, and much more. All right, let's go hang out with Sarah. All right, folks, Sarah Fragoso is the best-selling author of 6 books, mother of 3 kids, and one of the very first female bloggers in paleo. Sarah writes at sarahfragoso.com and co-hosts the highly rated new podcast, Better Every Day. Sarah is also a self-described badass wife who never complains and is always cheerful first thing in the morning, greeting her husband with a hot cup of coffee and a smile. That sure sounds nice, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here.
And you know that's complete bull.
Hey, I found it on your blog.
I know, but you have to read the sentence after that.
Okay, I got that too. This part is a big fat lie, but it's fun to pretend. So let's just go with it. So we're going with it.
Exactly. No, you know, it's half truth. There are days where I am that awesome.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, you do the best you can. But let me ask you this. So you do seem to do it all, right? You're a mother of 3, world traveler. We were just talking about that. Best-selling author, many, many other things. How do you prioritize your own health and sanity? To all the busy moms out there and busy people out there, how do you prioritize your own health when your life is so crazy?
Well, you totally nailed it by just saying I prioritize my own health. And
Okay.
I used to not. And, when I first started out in this space, and probably I think a lot of people, maybe women especially, I don't know, I don't like to categorize that much, but I mean, I really thought that I could do it all. And I think we want to do it all.
Yeah.
We live in this space where women, especially, we are afforded all of these amazing freedoms now, thanks to the feminist movement. No, we can vote, we can do all this stuff. Of course, that's way old school, but we can have careers, we can have families, we can write a million books and blog, we can do all this stuff, but there's no manual on how to like regulate that. How do you self-regulate and not just, go over the edge? And at first I did, like, I wasn't very healthy, started the whole paleo thing, got my health back, started CrossFitting and like, whoa, this is awesome. And, felt like Superwoman. And I'm like, I don't need to sleep. I don't need to manage my stress.
You found the magic bullet.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, I got this figured out. And I like totally went the opposite direction and crashed and burnt. And I kind of ride the line now. I really have to be careful. So yes, I prioritize my health. Like that comes first. And it's hard because being like an innately nurturing, loving person, I joke about bringing my husband coffee in the morning or whatever, but I enjoy taking care of my family. I feel like that's my calling.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that, and then I'm doing all this other stuff, and then I'm like, crap, what about me? So I have learned like big time that I have to take care of myself first, and it's not selfish. So, if things get quiet in internet land on my blog or whatever, it's because I'm dialing things back, and I'm like, okay, Sarah, you've got to be okay. Yeah. You cannot be a health guru and be wrecked, right? And I don't consider myself a guru at all. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I want to be an example. I want to be someone that other women look to and go, wow, okay, she can be successful, but she's not, on her deathbed, essentially. Right. So, I make sleep a priority, and I don't overtrain, and I make sure that I eat food that doesn't hurt me, and I meditate, and I take time off for myself, and I tell my kids to leave me alone when I need 5 minutes. So I do all that so I can do the stuff I do. Yeah,
it's someone explained it to me recently, because I don't have kids yet, but we're planning to eventually, and they said it's kind of like putting your own oxygen mask on first so you don't run out of air before you start helping your kids. Yeah. And I think, that's kind of an example of how you can live your life in a lot of ways. And a lot of people get tripped up when they, are so selfless that they completely ignore their own needs just to keep themselves healthy and sane. So, but you probably experienced your own mistakes, right? And you learned what to do now by going too far in the past, right? So what were some of the main mistakes you made as it relates to lifestyle?
I think I drank the Kool-Aid too hard when I first started making my life better. And, I think I thought that if I just, paleoed harder or worked out harder, I could get over the hump of, not being so tired or, whatever experiences I was having. I'm like, I just need to do things better. Yeah. And I completely neglected just the real fundamental stuff, like getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep at night and just taking a walk instead of, hitting the weights super hard in the gym because, I felt like if I didn't get in my workouts or if I didn't make the perfect paleo meal, then somehow I'd slip backwards. Because I think when you come from a place of being really unhealthy and then you get your health back, you just want to keep pushing harder instead of kind of finding just a place to put both feet on the ground and just live and enjoy. So, I definitely overdid it in both aspects of diet and exercise. And now I live in a much more sane place. And that's what I try to share with my clients at my gym and, the people who read my blog.
What are the biggest mistakes that you see in other people who are following you or coming to you for advice? What are the things that really stick out?
I think probably just what we were talking about is neglecting just like the psychological aspect of what health looks like and neglecting themselves overall. And, we talk a lot about this on my new podcast with Dr. Brooke. I feel like women are literally trying to kill themselves to be healthy, or they do nothing. It's like either end of the spectrum, I mean, I have women who come into the gym or who contact me who have been very sedentary, kind of doing the standard American diet thing, and they see things like Biggest Loser or other popular television shows that are promoting just like kick-ass fitness programs where they're going all day and they're restricting their diet to this extreme, and they're like, I can't do that. I will never run a marathon.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of it where women are doing way too much and they're not getting the results that they want. So I see those two big mistakes. It's like either side of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare to see someone just who kind of cruises along in the middle somewhere where they're like, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm doing well. Maybe I just want to make a few tweaks. So yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky for women, especially.
Yeah, for sure. But you raise a really interesting point. And this is one that I've been focusing on recently. It seems like people, well, they're always training for something, but they don't always know what that thing is.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it's like, what is the main goal here? Because when I was younger, I grew up, I was never a great runner, but I always loved to run. And so I did it pretty much my whole life. And, running marathons is not necessarily great for longevity, right?
No.
You can't optimize everything at the same time. So now I'm in this interesting spot. I'm about to turn 32, and I'm looking forward. What can I do for the rest of my life that's not going to put too much mileage on there, chew everything up, and that's kind of a squishy goal. Let's optimize longevity, right? What's the roadmap to finding your own sweet spot?
Right, and that is really hard. And I know as I get older, because I'm pushing 40, I'll be 40 next year. I just turned 39. My goals look so much different than they looked when I was 32. It's just, but it's hard like you said, it's hard to train for longevity. But when I'm sitting down with clients, I like to say to them, let's talk about where you're going to be when you're 65, 70, 80
mm-hmm.
versus 2 years from now or 5 years from now. And if I'm training an athlete, which I really don't, I honestly don't really like to train athletes. It's a lot harder to train an athlete than it is just an average person. It's a different game, yeah. Totally different game. It is different. And if you want that, if that is your goal, then there's going to be sacrifice. Like mm-hmm. any professional athlete you talk to once they're done with their sport will tell you, I gave up health in order to do this sport. Like right. It's part of it. If there's somebody who knows anything, and if they're in denial, cool. But most of them aren't, Mm-hmm. But if it's just an average person, and I am an average person, I really try to speak to that. Like, okay, you probably want to be able to pick up your grandkids and throw the Frisbee and, right. Not have help putting your luggage in the overhead bin and getting out of bed without having to roll over on your side and flop out onto the floor. So it's silly things, but I mean, I want to be better when I'm 70 than I am now. Yeah. That's what I try to kind of disseminate that information to the people that I train that are just walking into my gym wanting to be stronger, fitter, healthier, feel better. It's like, yeah, let's have a wonderful life for the rest of our life. Let's mm-hmm. dive into our coffin and shut the lid and be like, yes, I rocked it, rather than, well, I hit that PR, but then my knees went out.
Right.
So
yeah. And that's the issue. Is it worth it to be that fast or that strong if it means blowing a knee out and having to recover for the next 6 months or the rest of your life in that case, and never getting back to that spot? And it seems to me, and what I hope to create is kind of a community of people who are going for, you said, something to the extent of we're all kind of average people, right? Or at least most of us are average people. We're not elite athletes or Olympians, and that's its whole thing. But there's no reason that average people need to be guzzling a bunch of Gatorade and eating those, little. There's so many products for all that stuff, and the weird part is that it's targeted to kids, average people who are just looking to be relatively fit, right. And that's getting us in so much trouble. I think we need more clarity about what it means to be fit and or healthy for an average person, because that used to be built into our lives and now it's not. So especially considering how busy you are, what are some of the things you do on a weekly basis or every day to make sure that you're kind of artificially inserting this real life work in there where you're using your body?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really practice what I preach. I do a lot of walking. Mm-hmm. So every day includes some sort of walk, which people are like, I don't have time for that. But you totally do. Yeah. It becomes part of your routine, and then you can't imagine not having time for that. Yeah. So I have a dog. So my dog needs to be walked, and inevitably the kids end up coming with me. Or if they don't, I still got to take the dog for a walk, right? Yeah. Or even if the dog's already been walked or has already played, I figure out a way to get outside and move. And walking, I think, is such a fundamental thing that we neglect. So many people think that it's not really all that important. But I have actually noticed my cardiovascular endurance has increased.
Yeah.
My strength has increased. I have less aches and pains. I recover faster just by walking every day. So, I don't always encourage these silly little Fitbit things, but I love mine. And if it makes you neurotic, don't use it. But I really actually like mine because it helps remind me to get out and do that and move in that way. So I think if people even start there, it's huge. It's an easy thing to do. Everybody can put on their tennis shoes and go outside and walk. So, even clients that I have that come in who I don't think are ready for the gym, where they need to get their sleep dialed, they need to get their nutrition dialed, they need to, manage their stress a little bit. There's no reason they should be really, doing any sort of interval training or even weightlifting. That's what I tell them to do first is go outside and walk and sleep. So those two things right there will make you pretty dang fit if you're eating pretty clean.
Yeah.
So those are like kind of my two life hacks is sleeping well, walking, and then I lift weights about three, sometimes 4 times a week, three to 4 times a week, sometimes 2, depending on the week.
Yeah. And wait, a woman who lifts weights? Tell me more about this.
Yeah, it's crazy. I value my bone density, my mobility, my ability to pick up my kids and not hurt myself, and my ability to play and have fun and do things in life that probably even 10 years ago I wasn't able to because I wasn't strong enough. And, when I first started lifting weights, it was very goal-oriented about how much I could lift and, how much I could squat. And now I'm so excited that at almost 40, like we went camping this weekend and we were at this lake with this big wipeout zone structure in the middle of the lake that you had to climb on top of and jump over stuff. And it took a lot of upper body strength. And I was like keeping up with my kids like it was nothing. And it was easy and it was effortless. And that's what I train for now is just to be able to be functional. And I like how it makes my body look, but that's a total side effect of, just of being able to be strong and capable. And,
and what a great example for your kids as well, because I really do think we learn more than we realize by monkey see, monkey do. You see what your parents are capable of or the way they live their lives. And if you see your mom totally crushing it, when you're out on an adventure or a hike or even lifting weights or something like that, that's pretty cool. My mom, my wife's mom, she is incredible. She'll, Camelback Mountain out in Arizona. It's a pretty intense hike. And she used to do that pretty much every morning and pretty much run up and down the whole thing, just cruising past people who are in great shape. And I know that one of the reasons that my wife is so fit today and that's kind of built into her psyche is because she saw that. She knows it's possible and she sees the benefits of it as well. So it really rubs off on the people around you too.
Well, yeah. And I think for my kids, now that they're older, my youngest is 8, almost 9, they can see the difference between their parents and other other friends' parents and what we're capable of doing. And they're boys and they're funny. And, their way of complimenting me is by actually making fun of me. And,
that's how guys do it.
That's totally well, of course they see their dad who loves to pick fun at me too, all in love.
See monkey do.
Totally. But it's really fun to see that they understand that their parents are pretty awesome, that, we can keep up and, I'm the mom out there doing rather than watching, and that's great for them and they expect it, and I would hate for something to happen where suddenly I couldn't do that anymore because they expect that of us. Like we're going to be in the mix and in the action. And I have boys and they're rough and they're tough boys and I have to hang and I'm glad that I can. So, I want them also, whoever their partner is down the road, that they pick somebody that is able to keep up with them and that has like-minded interests, because I think that's really important in a relationship, where
isn't it though? Especially because both of us are blessed with other people who are interested. Your husband's a chiropractor, is that right?
He's a chiropractor and we co-own our gym together, and he's been an athlete his whole life. So yeah, absolutely. And
I can tell you, every time I see my wife exercising, like she was doing the kettlebells this morning, and then I followed that up by burpees right after it. It's it's not competitive. It's more just like the people who you become like the people around you. And if you can encourage them to do the right types of behavior, then it really benefits you as well. Certainly benefits your kids. And even the people out there who don't have dogs, it's great to pretend that you do, because if you imagine what happens to a dog when you don't walk it every day or multiple times a day. That's happening to us too. We just don't necessarily realize it because we're watching TV or stuck in the car or the office or something like that. But you're so right. When you just take that one walk a day, it completely changes the way that your body works. Now, let me ask you this, because I think for a lot of people, the idea of lifting weights, especially women, is very intimidating. But you don't actually need weights to even do it. Just air squats and push-ups and other various things are really easy to do. What are the things that you would recommend to someone who might not have an athletic background who wants to be more strong and functionally fit?
Yeah, you don't have to be an athlete or have an athletic background to lift weights. And in fact, 99% of the people I train, they come into the gym not having any sort of athletic background or ever have picked up a weight. And I always encourage people to start where they are, because, we see CrossFit videos and we see television shows where people are doing all of these really crazy things with barbells and dumbbells and kettlebells. And it can be very intimidating and yes, dangerous for people who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so, I highly recommend that people find a trainer to work with. Again, that's hard because finding a good trainer is kind of like finding a good mechanic. You don't know you've found a good one until you have found one.
Yeah. Or until you get hosed.
Or until you get totally hosed or broken or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I suggest you interview a trainer like you would somebody who's going to take care of your newborn baby, and not be afraid to ask really hard questions and ask for testimonials, talk to other clients, see what their track record is like. A good trainer should have like before and after pictures and testimonials and clients in their gym that you can go in and observe and talk to, in a track record. And not in a weekend certification could be nothing, or it could mean a whole lot if that person has worked with other people who are awesome and amazing and they're continuing to learn and to grow. So, you can, I have an online site where you can learn all the movements by going to my site online. And I don't mean to plug that. You can put it in the show notes if you want to, but there's resources out there. There's books that you can read. There's tons of great websites where you can go and learn how to move properly if you don't want to hire a personal trainer. But yeah, you need to start where you're at, which is why I say walk first. Learn how to air squat. Learn how to do a push-up. You can do a push-up against a wall. Learn how to just move your own body weight in a manner that is safe and effective. And once you feel like your joints are beginning to become more stable and your mobility is good and you don't have any pain with movement, you can then move on to moving under load and adding weight. And, just the very basic movements like deadlift, back squat, bench press, overhead press, if you have the shoulder range of motion to do that. Just those very basic things will absolutely tremendously improve your life and your ability and reduce your risk of injury. It's just about finding the right person to train with. And it's why we do retreats where people come and spend 4 days with us, where we look at their movement. We teach them how to breathe. Like, we start with that. Like, you need to learn how to breathe into your diaphragm and support your back and brace and know how to be under load. So, it can be as complicated or as easy as you want it to be. But I think if people are moving, that is step one. Just to get people into movement is so important, because so many people are afraid to even start.
Yeah. And you mentioned, I was listening to one of your podcasts recently, you mentioned going to Thailand. I think you were talking about someone who you thought they were probably in their 90s.
Yes.
And they were still out there crushing it. That's something that I definitely experienced a lot when we were, traveling around the world. You see other people or people in other countries, and they're in their 80s, 90s, and they've got, wiry strength from their biceps, and they've got this functional strength. They're going up and down mountains. They're carrying things. They're
full squats.
They're more fit than most of our 20, 30-year-olds here. What's the secret? What's the breakdown? Because you look at people in America, and most of us who are around that age can't get out of our cars. What do you think that breakdown is there?
Well, I think because we stop moving. We don't have to.
Yeah.
There's not a necessity for it. There's no need. Like, we have everything available to us, and 90% of us sit in a chair to do our work, to get our paycheck, so we can go to the store and buy prepackaged food that's already made, that we don't have to go out and harvest or hunt or even cook ourselves. So we've stopped needing to be functional. So yeah, you see little kids who are unable to get down on the ground and back up again without trouble, without a struggle. And it's really, really sad. It's really unfortunate that we just have stopped because there's no basic need for it. Where you go to a third world country and everybody has a place and everybody has to work and everybody has to be mobile in some way. Traveling in Southeast Asia, you don't see what you see in America, even the tourists, because you have to be able to get in and out of the back of a pickup truck because that's their taxis, or on and off a scooter, or, very, very basic things that aren't so basic here. And like I said about the whole walking thing, like a lot of people I work with who sit at a desk, I start them by saying, get a standing workstation, don't sit down for longer than 20 minutes. Yes. You sit in a chair. I mean, just sitting here with you now, I can feel my body going, my hamstrings are shortening, my hip flexors are getting tight. I can feel my low back because I don't live in this position for very long. And people do for 8-9 hours a day. Then they go home and they sit on the couch and their body just doesn't need to use any more energy than it has to, so it just shuts off, you know?
Atrophy is a real thing. And you unlearn the skills that you should inherently have just to be here. That's no longer required, like you said. But I want to ask you this, because I think you might have an interesting perspective, having coached a lot of other people and also personally. The breakdown between looking at how many carbs you're eating a day versus how much fat, especially as a woman, how do you balance that out? How do you know that you found the right spot? Because it's always kind of a moving target, isn't it?
It's totally a moving target. And I feel like with women especially, it's different based on how old you are, where you are in your cycle. And this is all stuff I'm still learning too, because, we stumble upon something like paleo, where it seems very cut and dry, and it's a higher fat diet kind of on its own, and it's a lower carb diet kind of on its own. And then we start getting all of these ideas of what we should do based on the latest trend or fad, or, there's, I need to put a gallon of butter in my coffee and only eat beef tallow and rub it on my face. Right. Well, as a woman, that might not be the best idea. Yeah. If you have any sort of hormonal imbalance, you might just be adding to that. And maybe you're pretty sedentary and you're only walking and you're not lifting weights, but 90% of your diet looks like sweet potatoes and paleo pancakes or whatever. Right. And finding your sweet spot really does take some self-experimentation and knowing who you are and understanding where you're at. And for some women who are really struggling, I am such a huge fan of getting your hormones tested, doing a saliva test, looking at, your even like your vitamin D and magnesium levels can play into what your food needs to look like, and how many carbs and how much carbs and how much fat. But people get so spun out on macronutrients that sometimes they just get frozen and they don't know what to do, and then they go back to whatever they were doing before. So, I really go back to just the approach of keeping it simple and, not overdoing any one thing until you kind of have your own self dialed and figured out. And for women, I'm a big fan of Carb-Cycling. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of putting a pound of butter on your sweet potato and just seeing how that works out, And on days you're more active, those are probably the days that you can afford some more starch. And if, you have a fat loss goal, that could look different. But I don't recommend a one-size-fits-all program for really anybody. My husband eats a lot differently than I do, but his makeup is completely different than mine. Right. So,
How about that? Like, can we dig in there a little bit? Because, like you said, we're built very differently as men and women. We have different needs that changes as the years go by. So how do you, especially if you're cooking dinner with your family or for your family, how are you preparing each individual meal?
Yeah, I definitely don't make like individualized meals for my family. I would lose my ever-loving mind, but
I can't imagine.
Yeah, wait till you have kids. You'll totally get it. Yeah. I'm like, here's what you're going to eat. If you don't like it, go make it yourself. I don't really care, but I'm done. Yeah. Kitchen is closed. But, and my kids and my husband both eat more starch than I do, for sure. Okay. So, typically for dinner, there's some sort of starch that's involved. And if I eat it, cool. If I don't, I don't.
And that would be like a sweet potato, or do you do any rice or anything like that? Or are there limitations there?
Not for us. No, we eat rice, we eat sweet potatoes, we eat white potatoes. Okay. That's kind of the extent of the starches in my house. We do some oatmeal for my kids, and, I'll have gluten-free bread lying around every now and then. But, that's their kids. plantain chips, whatever. We have some corn tortillas now and then. I'm not a food Nazi at all, but what we eat is very clean and it's real, and you know what it is when you look at it. I don't have food in my house that's no food, especially for my kids. I don't keep anything where I'm like, no, you can't eat that, because I don't want to raise neurotic kids. So whatever's there, they can eat, sort of thing. So, for dinner, if I make meat and vegetables and starch, I might not eat as much starch as my family does, or I might not put butter on it, and I might just get my fat from my meat or whatever oil I cook my vegetables in. So, I don't think too much about it. I just kind of know at this point what works for me. And, my husband knows what works for him, and the kids are kids. They eat when they're hungry. They eat a lot. They don't eat a lot. It's just, I have fruit available for them and snacks, and it works out how it works out. But what I've learned is that I cannot be neurotic, and I can't stick to one particular game plan all the time, or it turns into a neurosis for me. And it's different based on where I'm at in my life, how much I'm training, how much I'm not training, where I am in my cycle. It's just different, and I'm okay with that. And that sounds hard and complicated for women to achieve, but I promise you, once you kind of switch your diet to more of a clean eating, real food sort of perspective, and you start working out, you start moving your body, and you start feeling more connected with who you are, it becomes kind of easy to figure out, like, okay, I ate a bunch of carbs for breakfast. Maybe I had sweet potatoes and eggs, and I felt really hungry an hour later. You probably had too much carbohydrate and initiated an insulin response. Let's switch that up. So your body will tell you what it needs if you learn to pay attention.
And you learn what the signs are, because there are a couple of little shortcuts there. So that's one for eating too many carbs in the morning, say. What would be too low carb? What do you think you'd feel?
Well, for what I notice in myself personally, I don't sleep as well. I'm hungry. I wake up hungry in the middle of the night, or I wake up really hungry in the morning. So, and I have some blood sugar issues from some adrenal fatigue stuff that I've dealt with. So I have to be a little bit more careful with that. So for me personally, and for I know quite a few of my female clients, putting carbs in closer to the end of the day seems to help with that.
Sure.
They stay more, they stay more full. Their satiety signals work better during the day if they're not eating a lot of carbs during the day, and they put those in towards the evening, and their sleep is better. They wake up feeling refreshed and not starving. So that's one other little hack to kind of tweak with that. And dependent, like I said, on how much they train that day or who they are overall, it might be different. So
yeah. Now, what about things to make it a little bit easier, especially if you are feeding other people in your family? There are a couple little tricks, like wrapping things up in lettuce boats or collard greens. What are some other quick ways to kind of, if you know that you do need food right then, which happens to a lot of people, how do you make sure that there's something easy and maybe even portable that can fill you up?
That's a good question. I was just talking to a client about this morning, and she was saying, man, I'm good with like having beef jerky available or some macadamia nuts, but I don't eat enough vegetables. And so we just talked about how at the beginning of the week, I'll always buy like a few of those big English cucumbers, and I slice those up, and then I cut up a jicama, which I love. I'm like obsessed with that.
That's great.
Or I get some carrot sticks and slice up a bell pepper, and I just have everything already ready. And like you already mentioned the lettuce, like I'll have some romaine lettuce leaves. It takes me like maybe 15 minutes of prep, and I keep that all ready in my fridge. So I already have at least some sort of vegetable ready to eat with the already easy to grab proteins. So maybe it's as simple as some lunch meat or leftover dinner from the night before, or hard-boiled eggs, or whatever it might be. I always make a bunch of tuna salad. Always have that on hand. So, if you're prepared, then it's not hard because you don't have to think about it. So I just say take one day to just have some prep work done. So during your week, you can grab and go. And my son is a competitive gymnast, so I live at the gym. It's 30 minutes from my house. I'm there for 4 hours, 3 nights a week. Wow. And it's like at dinner time. So if I don't have stuff prepared, our only option is the snack bar. And you know what's in the snack bar at gymnastics. It's horrendous. Yeah, it's like what we talked about, Gatorade and Doritos, like kids need that for athleticism or whatever.
Sure.
So, I have to always be prepared. So it's just taking that initiative to just have like an afternoon set aside to make sure you've got stuff ready to grab and go.
Now, what about the I don't want to go too much about like calories in, calories out. or
Yeah.
macros or anything like that. But, that whole world does exist, and there's a science to it to some degree. But how do you reconcile that with actually having a real life and not counting everything or not freaking out? Because it seems like a lot of what you focus on is really making this real for people so they can actually do it, as opposed to, the Olympic athlete. Sure, they can count every calorie, or someone can count every calorie for them. But most people can't do that. So how do you know you're listening to your body? How do you train yourself to really get in tune with what you might need, whether it's more food, less food, carbs, etc.?
It's really hard. It's really hard, I think, especially for women who tend to sometimes be really out of touch with what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage women not to think that there's going to be a big shift overnight. And with a lot of my clients that I work with, I honestly have them start with like one meal at a time. And we'll look at their food for like a week. I always say, because I meet specifically with nutrition clients, and then I'll have my clients that I work with in the gym where I kind of do both. And my nutrition clients specifically, I make them track their food for a week, which sucks. And I don't want people to do that always, because it is time consuming. But often we don't really even know what our habits are until we sit back and look at them. And we're like, wow, that's my life. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I know for women who are super busy, which is, I don't know, everybody, they often come in where they're not eating enough. Like, that's really kind of the trend that I see, is that women who are busy all day at the office or whatever, they're like maybe taking a couple bites of food. And then I see like a couple of like real big binge evenings where they're finally so starving that they kind of lose control. And then I also see the opposite, where maybe they're eating a fairly clean, healthy diet, but the calories are kind of crazy. Maybe it's because it's all predominantly coming from fat, and that adds up really fast. And maybe they're not really doing much to counteract that, because I'm not a big believer in the calories in, calories out thing too. Right. But at some point, like, a scoop of coconut oil and a handful of mac nuts and salami and cream cheese and bacon and eggs and a big steak for dinner really does kind of add up, and like Rob Wolf used to joke with us, maybe don't eat the whole Costco thing of nuts.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a problem, but I don't know if the cavemen were really doing that. So it's just about, I think, taking a snapshot, like an overview of what your life looks like, and then making tweaks from there. And once women start to feel better, it's easier to say, okay, this is where I was kind of slipping up, and this is what I need to do differently. And if you're making a big change, like I've never eaten anything healthy in my life, start with one meal at a time until you can do it. Start with breakfast, get that handled for a week, then maybe add in a snack, and then lunch, and then dinner, because it can be very overwhelming when you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to like shape it all in like a few minute answer, but
Sure.
It's doable.
There's another issue too. It's like when you go out to food, especially it's more built for my appetite, like typical man, 5'9", I'm about 175. My wife is about like 105, 110. They serve us exactly the same thing every time, in the same proportions. How do you manage that if you're not necessarily cooking for yourself, but you're eating out? Is there a strategy there?
For sure. Well, I mean, I find personally, it depends on what it is, but it's kind of hard to overeat on like a steak and some vegetables. Like if I get a huge ribeye, like there's a place that my husband and I like to go to. It's a Basque restaurant where their steaks are like the size of my thigh, like they're giant. And I realize that, and I anticipate it. It's super hard for me to eat a whole, 14-ounce ribeye, because at some point I'm just like done. The signals are there. I'm not eating something that's like pizza, where it's like that magic mix of carbohydrates and fat, where your body is like, eat more of this, keep going, because you don't know when you're going to get this again. It's like really important that you stock up, because this food source might be gone, which is not true. So
there's a pizza shortage here in America.
There's a pizza shortage. You can't get it all. So I mean, we all know that, right? We can dust a pizza and like not even look back to, you're like, oh my God. But when you're eating real food, it is harder to overeat, initially or innately anyway. It's like your body just kind of stops. I could do it. I mean, it's a really good ribeye, but it's
you kind of have to force
stop.
yourself to, though, right? And that's what you realize, is that there's a fundamental difference in eating real food, where your body's like, oh, I'm done now. I'm going to tap out.
Absolutely. I mean, whoever was like, I ate way too much chicken salad. Oh my God. You just don't hear that very often. I mean, I guess you could, but my strategy when we're eating out with the kids is I'll get like a side of something, and then I eat whatever they don't. Because, ultimately they'll probably not be able to finish whatever they get.
Sure.
So my husband and I split food a lot too. Or I'll get the whole steak and then I'll eat the rest for breakfast the next day. It's
Right.
not that hard when you're making real food choices when you go out to not overeat.
Except for the fat piece, like you mentioned before, right? Because if you do look at the, I don't want to say the amount of calories that I burn a day or my wife, but if you just look at our physical size, right? She's about 2/3 the size of me. And also has a different makeup and different hormones and that sort of thing. So it's like, while your husband might be able to get away with polishing off too much of that cream cheese or pastrami or something that's really fatty, it actually adds up a lot more quickly for women. Is there any sign, especially for people who are brand new to kind of eating in a higher fat way, that the fat might be a little bit too high? Do you feel off? Greasiness adds up, but you don't always notice it right away, right? Not like protein anyway, not like steak or chicken breast or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for women, what they tend to notice is like their digestion gets a little off, which, someone will probably say take digestive enzymes, which will help, obviously. But at the same time, your body's kind of telling you like, whoa, this is a little crazy. I know, like for me, I'll break out. I'll get some acne stuff going on, especially if I have too much fat from dairy. My body kind of talks to me that way.
Right.
So, it could even throw off your cycle if you're doing too much fat and you already have some estrogen issues. We've seen that happen before too.
Sure.
So it's just, dependent on who you are and what your hormones look like at that given moment. But I think just paying attention to how you digest your food is number one. Like your gut tells you, right, when you're doing things right or you're not. And so I always say, hey, you know what, eat more veggies, just do that, and then fill in the gaps with your protein and your fat. And, like I said, depending on who you are, I mean, there are some days where, most of my calories are going to come from fat. That's just how my day is going to look. But I can't do that every day. I have learned that. It just doesn't work for my makeup, for my hormone profile. I really like fibrous vegetables. It really helps just with everything with my body. I eat a lot of food, but I can't eat a 2,500 calorie diet. I just can't. I'm 5'2". I weigh 114 pounds. A lot of that is muscle. Like I need to, I need to eat a lot of food to sustain that. But a lot of food for me looks different than a lot of food for you, or a lot of food for my husband. So, and just don't go hungry. That's the other thing too, is women get to the shaky, crazy edge of insanity when they don't eat enough. And then that's when bad food choices come in. Right. And it's easy to overdo it on anything, so just don't get to that point. It's not worth it.
But it's tempting to go over there if you're coming from kind of surviving on little bits of sugar all day long, right? Which is where a lot of people come from. So I think what we're seeing, especially as the years go on in paleo, you've seen that it's evolved quite a bit. Paleo and health in general, right? The whole world is really evolved, is that you see people oscillate between these two extremes. And you kind of do need that experimentation. But I think at this point, the good news is that a lot of us have been through the extremes that can help coach people through, some of the mistakes that we made that we hope other people don't make. So I tip of the hat to you, Sarah, for making that a part of your life and your mission. We're just about out of time, but before we go, could you tell people where to find you and what you're working on next?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm blogging exclusively at sarahfragoso.com. And Everyday Paleo is still a brand. It's still out there. There's still a Facebook page, but I'm no longer blogging there. If you type in everydaypaleo.com, it will go to sarahfragoso.com. And, I'm sharing a lot more than just food on that website. So it's really just my own ramblings and musings on life and perspective and growth and change and health, of course, and fitness. I homeschool my kids, so I talk about that a little bit, and I share recipes. You mentioned earlier the new podcast. I've been podcasting for years. I just started a new podcast with Dr. Brooke Kalanick. She's a naturopathic doctor. She's my doctor. And so we're really diving into women's issues, from fitness to nutrition to hormones to health to kids to, everything in between. So we're covering the gamut of topics over at that podcast. So you can find us on iTunes and anywhere that you could find a podcast. And I am working on a couple of book projects that are kind of top secret. So please stay tuned. And once those are being released, I will let you know. So I'm teasing you all with that. And that's basically it. I'm on Instagram. You can find me there, Sarah Fragoso. On Twitter, Everyday Paleo or Sarah Fragoso. Facebook, same thing. You can just Google me. I'm there. You can find me everywhere.
You are there. And I appreciate that. Let's end with one thing that I did find on your blog. You say, I have to choose to see the pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows whenever I can in order to not always live in the moments that are not pink, fluffy, or rainbowy. Would you like to expand on that at all?
Have you watched that video?
I have. Yes, I have.
Oh, God. Yes. As I have gone through this life, it's hard. There isn't a moment where it's not some sort of struggle, right? And that's basically what life is. But life is also very beautiful. And even I think in the moments that are painful and hard, we can find the beauty. We can see the lesson, even though we might not see it right away. We have to choose to pick out those moments that are freaking awesome. Otherwise, we all know people who are kind of like the negative Nancys, where they always live in that place where, yeah, it's a struggle, and we're going to emote that, and we're going to let that be our identity. And either you come back from the ashes and come back from the rubble, or you don't. And every day there is something I could pick and say, oh my God, this made my day bad. I'm trying to teach my kids this too. It's up to us. We really have to choose it. It's like, I'm going to choose to focus on those pink fluffy unicorns, and I'm going to feel my pain. I'm going to feel it deeply, but I'm also going to love and give and be happy just as passionately as when I feel those painful moments. So that's what that post is about.
Excellent. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on this show. If you're listening and you like podcasts, which you might, then definitely check out Sarah's new show called Better Every Day. I've listened to the first few episodes. It's really great, especially if you're a woman, you want to learn more about not just how to eat, but how to live. It's a great show, so I encourage you to check it out. Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we finally connected in real life.
Finally. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Before you go, don't forget to grab your listener discount on our 30-day fat loss plan. In this plan, we share 30 days of mouth-watering wild diet meal plans that are designed to help you drop fat with real food. The meal plans are paleo-friendly, easy to make, and literally the meals that my wife Allison and I eat just about every day and night to stay lean, fit, and happy. In the program, you'll get the most effective method of meal and nutrient timing to best stimulate fat loss and muscle recovery, the truth about how much protein you really need for your body type, 30 days of specific healthy, fat-burning meal plans as a done-for-you nutrition strategy, and tons more. If you check it out today, you'll even get a listener discount. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com/30 days. That's the number 30, DAYS. Once again, that's fatburningman.com/30 days. I'll see you there. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Fat Burning Man. If you liked it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, the podcast app, or wherever else you might be listening to or watching this show. Got a second? Please leave me a quick review on iTunes. I always love hearing from you, and if you think someone else might like and benefit from this free show, please take a second to share it with a friend or with a family member. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at FatBurnMan and Facebook by typing in Abel James or Fat Burning Man. Drop me a line anytime. Did you know that I've recorded over 150 episodes of Fat Burning Man, winning 4 awards in independent media and hitting #1 in more than 8 countries? And here's some more good news. You can download and listen to every single episode for free. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com. I'll give you a second to type it in, fatburningman.com. And you'll get all the show notes in video and audio versions for all the past episodes of Fat Burning Man. Better yet, enter your best email at fatburningman.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll even send you a quick start guide to start burning fat right now and a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes as a special thanks for signing up. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now, enter your best email to get your free fat burning download straight to your inbox, and make sure that you never miss a show again. This is Abel James signing off. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great week.
Actually, my son, it's very funny. He is a complete paleo protein kid by choice. You try putting a carb in front of him that's not a veggie, and he just like pushes it off, and that wow. So it's not a taught thing. I think that's just